This is the third time that I've tried to record. I'm on a little bit of a struggle bus today. But you know what? I feel as though like that's life. And I typically will have like a good idea as to what I'm excited to talk about, like once I get done with my journaling of a morning. And it just, life happened. There was an inspector that came, and so I'm hours behind, and I'm not in my flow that I typically am. But I think that that's like a good point of, you just kind of have to go with the flow, getting back into that feminine energy. And while it's been a great morning, I've gotten some work done, I've had ahas, and I've had conversations, and I've had these moments of excitedness because I thought from my self-critiquing that I was still so far behind of where I wanted to be. And then not out of comparing, but more out of observing and maybe a little bit of comparing, just to kind of see like how much farther, like what else I needed to do. And I mean, I'm kind of at the point of just practice now. And this is for my speaking. Because it is what it is. I'm wanting, my next goal is to be like a public speaker. So it's weird to even admit that and to like put that out there. But if you don't put out there what it is that you want, then how are you ever supposed to be known? How are you supposed to believe it in yourself if you're not ready to like speak it out loud? And I'm not that far away, and I'm excited. And even with these little videos, I think it's only been a week, if even 7 days yet. And today is a little bit off, but my consistency and my ability to work through thoughts and stay on topic for the most part is not perfect, but it's getting there. And this is all unscripted, right? Like this is all just off the top of my head. And it's exciting because I'm not that far away. Like all it is changing that that identity that I have within myself, and like believing in myself and putting myself out there, practicing, creating a structure. I feel like there's so many little different parts, and it's like the external, structure and foundation, and like what we know in the business side of like, this is how this gets done. But like, there's also the inner part. There's also the inner understanding, the inner belief, it's the opposite of like the terrible stories that we have from childhood, but like actually building up stories and the identity. Like I believe an identity is literally just the stories that you tell yourself, like what you're wanting to become, and then showing yourself evidence, and then your subconscious like believes you, and then it just becomes your new self. That's a very, very compressed idea of identity. But for now, like that's exactly what it is. And I'm excited. I'm excited because shit is actually doesn't seem like it's so far away. Whenever I first decided I wanted something new, I had no idea what the hell I wanted. I just knew that I wasn't happy where I was, and you kind of have to go off of what you don't like to be able to figure out what you do like. And along the way, I got hung up on the stuff that I didn't like, and it took me like taking all these different routes to even figure out like what direction I actually wanted to go. And there's so much that goes on. And I know, like, within myself, there are underlying stories, there are underlying beliefs, and I've allowed my inner consciousness to take the reins, like the fear and worries and just these these stories that don't even feel like stories. Like it's been so normal for so long that it's hard to even pinpoint them until you do pinpoint them. And then you're like, well, why is this going on in my head? And it's getting back into like that present moment and awareness and all these terms that, depending upon how you came across them, can definitely cause some mayhem with the emotions. And that's kind of another thing, is like the way that I got started, there's a little bit of shame there for not being more precise and more logical about it, in the same aspect of like not doing my research and only taking, a couple people's point of view instead of like real research. But it is what it is, and you continue. And so these, like, I realize that they go on very quietly, and I mean, they're loud, but they're not recognizable until you recognize them. And then it's all about switching them up. And it's amazing how quickly you can revert back into those old stories. So the last couple days I've been like on this pinwheel back and forth of like doing one thing, or, well, you kind of have to do all these things. And I'm really learning that, again, you have to think for yourself, because you have to understand what it is that you want out of it, what you want out of life, like what it is that your next goal is, and what's going to work for you. Like, what's worked for you up to this point, and you know what you don't like about what's went up until this point. And so in the mix of all that, I feel as though if you don't, like, it's not a linear path, right? But there are parts where you need to fluctuate in order to get like the full comprehension, like the full effect of life. And maybe that's just because, I grew up with like morals and an understanding and like a whole structure of like people pleasing, of taking care of other people. And unfortunately, like I didn't really pick up on the fact that I needed to take care of myself. But then you also have people who were told since they were children that they are superior and that like they are worthy, and maybe not even to the point of like all hail, but like I wasn't raised that way, so I don't really know. But you know how some people get a little narcissistic, like they think their shit don't stink. And I have to believe that somewhere along the line, somebody like ingrained that into them, because they didn't want them to be the weak person who allowed people to walk all over them, because maybe that parent was. Doesn't really matter. The fact is like, you have some people on each extreme. And in order to like balance that out, at least for me, it's like you want to learn the other extreme, and so you step into the other extreme, but then you realize like maybe I went a little too far, so then you have to get pulled back into like where you came from. But then like just being over here isn't enough, and so you want to get a little bit more in here, and it's just this constant back and forth of creating a balance. But the balance is never equal, and that is in not only like characteristics and like taking care of yourself, but it's also in like work and play. Like there's just so many different patterns that collide into each other, that what I'm figuring out is that there is not one specific way. There is not one route that is 100% correct, because each individual has their own perspective inside of them, their own beliefs, their own stories, their own experiences that they have lived through that's creating their own mental image of what the world is. And so all these people that are telling you, well, this is how it is, this is how it is, that's how it was for them. And now, like, some people, you know, like, there's a lot of similarities, but the fact of, like, just hoping that somebody's got the golden ticket for you to have the most happiest, successful life that you could ever want is so far-fetched, because they're not, like, your life is not exactly the same as theirs. And that's a good thing. Like, it's a good thing to be unique, and it's a good thing to have our own perspective, and it's a good thing to have, you know, our own free will. And so I don't know why I went down that route, besides the fact of, like, I really just don't want to tell people what to do, but I do enjoy telling, like, what's worked for me in case somebody else, like, gets into it. So that's kind of where I'm at. Again, man, today has been this video is how it used to be. Like, I feel like the last couple days I've been really good about staying on point, but this one is feeling very scattered. And again, like I said, it wasn't, I could have written down some notes, but we just went with the flow. And so, you know, you learn from what you don't like, and this is something that I don't like. So on that note, have a good day, Tater, and yeah, don't be so hard on yourself. Bye.